Joined by Paige O'Dwyer. Paige is a speech language pathologist and the owner and director of Communication Options Inc., a private speech therapy practice in Red Deer, Alberta. As a passionate speech language pathologist, Paige draws inspiration from her resilient and innovative team of SLPs. Together, they share a deep commitment to their field, constantly adapting and thriving in continuously evolving conditions. Paige takes pride in leading a team that is not just skilled professionals, but also individuals who are genuinely enthusiastic about making a difference in their community. Beyond speech therapy, Paige is proud mother of two, finding joy in the beautiful chaos of family life. She keeps an active balance between her own sports and activities and cheering on her kids. She loves music, guitar, reading, and travel. A lifelong student, Paige embraces new challenges and opportunities for growth with an open mind and a commitment to continual self improvement. Paige, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Does that cover everything, or is there anything else you'd like to add before we talk about maintaining work-life balance and running a stressful business?
No, I think that pretty much covers, yeah, everything.
Awesome. All right. Well, if we can start with two questions, get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
So, what is your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur?
Well, I love lots of things about being an entrepreneur, but I think the favorite is just the freedom that it offers. And one of the reasons why I found this new route of kind of what I was looking for is just because we're not confined to the rigid structures of a traditional job. And I have the flexibility to make my own schedule, to have kind of lots of seasons of change. I love leading a team. I feel like that's one of the best parts of my job is just being able to have a team that we can be flexible and just creative and do different things that might not be able to happen if we were working for, somebody else or more public sector. And yeah, just the flexibility to make my own work-life balance as it changes, as the seasons change in my own life. Yeah, all of those things.
Oh, that's awesome. I know your bio mentioned quite a few things that you like to do, but what do you like to do in your free time?
Yes, yeah, I think that outlined it pretty well. I like to keep busy, and I have two kids that are kind of in the busy stage of their life now, doing lots of sports and activities. So I really love to be just part of that. I love music, and so just playing guitar and just different kinds of music in my life, and yeah, some sports and activities and travel and all of those things listed in my outline is yeah how I spend most of my time.
Busy. Well, let's get into it. So, our first question for you is, what inspired the creation of Communication Options Inc., and what motivates your team in speech therapy and early education sectors?
Well, we are actually celebrating our 30th year right now, and it was
Wow.
actually my partner. Yeah, so we've been around for a long time, and it's been really awesome to watch the evolution of what communication options has become. So 30 years ago, my partner Barb, she actually started communication options with the vision of wanting to have an innovative practice and also really being able to support anyone who works with her in a work-life balance. So those are really important things to our team. And we are actually now in our final month. We've had a 5-year transition plan of the business changeover. So I worked for communication options for many years. And then when we had some different ideas for the community, Barb and I partnered up. And then I've been now working on taking the company over for the last 5 years. And we are in our final month. So it's a really big time in our transition as Barb finishes her last chapter. But the company was based on three core values that are dedicated to innovative practice, exceeding customer expectation, and the passion for personal and professional growth. And I think that that really is what fuels us. Two parts really is that the professional and personal growth piece, and just really finding that balance. As you know, our job is quite demanding, in especially as complexities rise. And we're in the schools a lot with a lot of challenges and needs. And I truly believe that to do a good job for our families and to show up for our families, we need to be content at home and making sure that our balance at home is set first so that we can show up for everybody else the way we need to. So that's just something that we really value in our team. And we usually have lots of connections throughout the year, but especially before we start the new school year, we always check in with our team and just see where they're at in their own life so that we can decide their FTE. And it really ebbs and flows every year depending on where they're at with their children's ages and children's schedules and their partners' schedules. And so, yeah, moving from part-time to full-time is a constant shift in our team and something that we value that we can offer that, because that was one of the reasons for my switch over, is that it wasn't offered to me to have flexibility in my schedule. And that was a huge value. So yeah.
That's awesome. Do you guys take insurance or is it private pay only? I know you're in Canada, so I'm not sure how different that is.
Yeah. Yeah, so we do a real mix. So we used to mostly be in the school. So we are a private company, but the school districts have some flexibility in hiring their own providers. And so again, it's always changing every single year, but we mostly work in the pre-K and early years, pre-K kinders, but with some of our districts, we work all the way till grade 12. So that is government funded, but we're always trying to differentiate the different programs and things we offer as private as well, because we can't count on, the government funding every year and we never know how it'll change. So we are always looking for new ways to support, our both our team to make sure that they have what they need for jobs every year, but also the community because the grants and things change every year in the communities. So how we can support our families. So yes, we do take insurance. Lots of our families who come for private do have insurance that they use. And then also we take private pay. And then we also do some mixes, in some of our groups where, they can submit for some insurance and do some private pay. So a real mix.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I feel like in the United States, there's this shift. Providers also trying to work directly with the schools and receive the
Yeah.
IDEA funding. So, yeah, but it seems like Canada's been doing that for a long time. I mean, we have too, but SLPs are realizing they have more control. You don't have to go through the middleman as much anymore.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think it can be a challenge. Like I know that we've shifted too from public government agencies doing the schools to us. And the one challenge here is that we need like a group big enough that so we are a team right now of 11 SLPs and 6 support staff. And I think that one of the things we offer is that flexibility of making sure we have consistent service because if the group's not big enough, then we can't because there's a lot of schools in a district, right? And so I think our power is that we can kind of break them up. And many of our SLPs work in many different districts. So they have, depending on their location or depending on their passion, if they love pre-K or older kids, or if they're, more diversified in the complex needs students. And so we really try to match. But then the power I think we have is that if someone goes on mat leave or somebody needs a change in adjustment, then we have the people to cover it. Where I know that's been a challenge in schools before is if somebody leaves in that position, no one's getting seen, right? So that's just one thing that we're able to offer that I think is really great.
That's such a great point. So, what future programs or services are you excited about now that you are about to be the full time owner? And
Yeah.
how do you plan to adapt your offerings for your clients' evolving needs?
Yeah. So one program that we've actually been running for a few years now that I think is one of our best programs that we've created, and we're always adapting it, is our Partners in Play program. And it's a speech and language intervention program for 3-year-olds, but it's SLP-led, but child-centered, just focused on play. And the reason we started that is because we're in pre-Ks all the time. We're doing all the assessments for the incoming pre-K kids going into schools. And in Alberta, if you're a 3-year-old with severe speech and language needs, you get a special unit of funding from the government. But the tricky thing is these 3-year-olds then, who we know if they're coming in for severe delays, are actually developmentally quite a bit younger. And they're going to these pre-K programs that have 4-year-olds, and there's such big, vast differences. And so it's challenging for both the teachers for programming, but also really for the students. We find that it's just very overwhelming for them, right? To be able to have to go into these big classrooms. And often, especially since COVID, it's sometimes their first time separating from parents. And it just can be really tricky. So as service providers, we're consultative. We go in a couple times a month, we lead our strategies, and the teachers do a great job and they're always doing the best they can, but they're not SLPs who are there full time, right? So we created Partners in Play in collaboration with the district we're working with to take those 3-year-olds out of that program. And we just do a 3-year-old program that is completely focused on just play and just really our communication skills. So we don't have transitions. We don't have forced activity. We're just fostering communication and interaction skills. And it's really a readiness program to get them ready for a typical pre-K program when they're 4 years old. So we only keep them for the 1 year right now. And our whole focus is expanding speech and language skills. So we have tons of opportunities for them. Like we invite them to craft, and we invite them to different sensory activities, movement breaks, but it's completely child-led in we're setting up the environment to make it completely like tons of vocabulary opportunities and all these opportunities for learning and language. But then it's based on the child's interest. And we've seen an amazing success with it. And then from that program, we are building new programs because the success has been so great that sometimes our severe kiddos at the start of the year are only coming out mild at the end of the year. And then with government changes every year, sometimes there's nowhere for them to go next because some pre-K programs are only taking severe kiddos. And so this past year, we built an afternoon program for inviting those kids to come as community partners. So where they weren't qualifying for district funding anymore, now parents who wanted to keep them with us, or we wanted to give access to the same sort of support services, even if they weren't qualifying for funding anymore. So that's just kind of led to that. And then, we're always trying to be flexible and innovative based on what we see in the community. We're actually doing like an open clinic night tomorrow because that was something that the public services used to offer years ago. And I think it was a well-used service, but it hasn't come back in our community since COVID, I don't think, or maybe even previously. But lots of those programs, we're just trying to figure out what the community needs and how we can support, because we have, I get a lot of phone calls and things from parents with questions. They just want to know more. And is speech therapy the right service, and it is the right time? So yes, that was a new thing. We just started having open clinic nights to drop in and just talk to an SLP, see our space before they, so they can feel comfortable in making an informed decision. So yeah, so lots of fun programs, but all kind of stemming from just the needs we see at the time.
I love that. So where are they being seen for this program, and then how long?
Yeah, so it is the full school year. And actually, we just moved locations this past year, which has been such a blessing. We were in downtown, which was a bit of a rough neighborhood the last few years. And we had two different buildings. We had one for our Partners in Play program, then one for our private, which wasn't ideal to always be running back and forth. But so now we've just moved last August to a beautiful building that has everything under one roof now. And our preschool, or our place, it's not really a preschool, it's a play intervention program because it's completely read by speech pathologists. And so it's on one side, and then the private office on the other side, all in one building, which is amazing. And so it runs the full school year. So we are still partnering with school districts because we don't take the government funding ourselves, but we provide all the services. And so, yeah, it runs from September to June. And the beautiful thing is that we really follow the child's lead in that now, like the children have come so far already in knowing the routines and the structures, and now they're ready to start those more invited tasks like coming to tabletop and coming to carpet time. And so as they're ready, we build those things in, because then our whole idea is that by the end of our program, they're ready to jump into pre-K and they know what's expected and they have the skills to communicate and they know how to play with other kids, and they're completely ready for those foundational skills that then the academics offer in a typical pre-K setting. So we don't focus on any of those academic things, and we're just functional communication. And yeah, so it's a building program. So yeah, but it runs the school year.
Very
Wow.
cool.
Yeah.
Do you have like a caseload cap within the classroom or a certain amount of
Yeah.
ease to child ratio?
Yes, we are a very heavy adult to child ratio, which is also, I think, what makes it so successful, because it's so heavy on adult models. And, sometimes we've had hesitation with parenting. Well, if everybody has a speech and language delay, how will that look for my child? But it works beautifully because everybody's difference is so different, right? So some kids are having trouble with the sounds they're making. Some are having trouble with using, someone's a social communication. So everybody comes together in the same group, and we really just work on their goals within the group. So there's enough peer interaction and modeling from all the different needs. But we are 3-to-1, 4-to-1 ratio. And we've been really lucky. Yeah, so it's quite, because we have our SLP there. We have our very skilled SLPA who's been working in our programs forever. And then we have the district also provides us with 2 EAs. And so it ebbs and flows sometimes, because we do have kids with higher needs at some times, and then others who don't need that one-on-one attention. But we've also had a really keen interest in our community from volunteers and people who are going into speech pathology programs. And so we always take all of those people, because as much, adult interaction as we can get is so great, especially at the start of the year when we're building all the skills. Yeah. So yeah. Does that answer your question? I'm trying to think of what the other piece was. Yeah.
4-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
So
So
do you
high adults.
much do you do it mostly from like how many adults to children, or do you max out like, I don't know?
Yes, we do max at 12 in a group because our space isn't super big. And so we just want to be kind of cognizant of making sure that all the adults can fit in the room too with the kids, because you don't have 12 kids. And so, yeah, we only have 12, and same in the afternoon. Just kind of, that's the max our space can hold. And then, yeah, just kind of, we also are looking at building this year's, like in the afternoon group, some mix of some PUF and community kids, especially for those, because as we know, like PUF in Alberta is this special grant that we get for the 3-year-olds who have services, but just kind of looking again at offering, the correct peer model, just lots of differences in getting our community involved and offering community placements because it's really tricky sometimes for those families to find something. And another piece that I love about our Partners in Play program is that we reserve Mondays of the program, so one day a week, to invite families in for one-on-one time with the SLP. So something else we find that's really challenging in the schools is that, we write notes home all the time to the families, but we don't get to see them. And that's just a piece for us that's missing, that we want to show what the strategy looks like and show how to implement it. And we love that in our private practice. That's the best part of working with families, right? Is that collaboration. So in our program, it was just so important to not just have the drop off quick 2 minutes at the door. We invite them in to take turns coming in for that one-on-one time on that fourth day a week. And that's been just really successful too in making sure we have that family connection. So yeah.
That's awesome. How did you create the program? Did you follow something else or have other inspiration, or was this just kind of like a brain baby by a couple
It was
SLPs?
it was a good grade, maybe. Well, and I think that one thing that I know in private practice and everywhere really, but is that just there's constant change, right? It's just nonstop change and having to be flexible. And so we actually started, one of the reasons I had gotten started with the ownership of the program was when I was on maternity leave, I had an idea that I wanted to start for connecting family training programs, really, where a family could come with their child and do like a 6-week program where we're working on something specific, right? And kind of having 3 different levels, whether it's early communicator or, those with just like grammar and concepts, kind of mid-level communicator, or a later stage where it's more social communication and how to use language. So when I approached my boss at the time, Barb, she loved the idea and said that it was something that she's actually been wanting to do as well, but just hadn't had the time to implement yet. So we worked together on this and started it. Because at that time, there was a government program that actually supported and wanted families to come from the district with their child to do extra supports. It was called family-oriented planning, and it was a really big initiative in the government. So we were able to get that money from the school districts who were excited to send their children who had these needs to parent training. And we did that for a couple of years, and it was awesome. But then COVID came, of course, and we weren't allowed to mix cohorts. And then, just things changed in the government and they stopped funding all family oriented planning to that, extra piece. And so then we had to shift. And so we thought, well, we need a cohort with one group of kids. And one of the challenges always for us in the service delivery model that we've been in is those 3-year-olds in programming, especially those of ours, the speech and language kiddos who, don't have a lot of functional communication. We just had a passion to do it ourselves and be less consultative and more just SLP-led and driven. And just so we approached the districts about asking if we could take those kiddos through their funding. And because they have little things they need to provide still, like the teacher piece, to make sure that funding for our education system is all in line, because we don't do any of that part. And so we made the shift the first year, and it was so successful and exciting. And so we went from 12 kids the first year to the second year, we did a full morning and afternoon program and had 24 kids. This past year, we went back to 12 kids and then opened up our afternoon program. So I think just we're really open to just doing as we go. Like as we're making it, we make it on the go based on the needs and based on the resources we have. And that's just one of the best parts again about being in private practice is we have the flexibility to do that, right? We can change it as we like and whatever meets the needs of our families.
Yeah, that's amazing. So,
Mhm.
what advice would you offer to those starting out in the educational or therapeutic sectors, and what key lessons have you learned from it?
Oh, goodness. I think that there's a lot. I think that we just all learn on the go. I think that just if you have a passion to start your own practice, I would honestly, my best advice is to jump in and to learn as you go. And I think one thing that really is important is setting your values, because your values really are going to drive, everything in your practice, from setting your goals to aligning things with your own passions and decision making. There's going to be so many things I think that you have to say yes and no to. And it's a hard balance, because if you have opportunities to say yes to lots of things, just to avoid, making sure you're saying yes to the right things. I think it's important to set values for both your company and your personal, as you're moving through, and knowing that the seasons change, right? So I try to set different values multiple times throughout the year, knowing that my seasons change and summer might look different for me than back to school in the fall, and things have to shift all the time, and being okay with that. I think that having a mentor is a really great thing, or somebody to just externally process with, whoever that may be, whether they're in the field or not, just somebody to kind of run ideas by and get feedback from, and just different viewpoints. Because I think sometimes we can get stuck in our own head. And so it's great to know what we're really good at and what we might need help with, being flexible and open to change, and knowing that I think sometimes that change can be super scary, but really that's when the best things are made, when it's an opportunity, when you have to shift and you have to change things, and that can provide new opportunities to, yeah, to grow programs and to be innovative. And so those are, I think, the big things, just setting values, having a mentor or somebody on your team that you can talk to, and yeah, and just having a really set core values that you can make sure you're having a good work-life balance.
I love the values that you outlined at the beginning, like outside of I think in the first question that we asked, so easy to like work in your business that a lot of business owners forget to take a step back and work on the business. And the fact that you continuously review your values and goals is just a really good example of probably why you guys are so successful and so big. So thank you for that reminder. And you got a lot of things going on. So what
We do have lots of
strategies do you use to maintain a work-life balance while managing a successful business?
Yeah, so it comes back to, again, identifying the values of the season and knowing that they change, and knowing that there's going to be times where I work a lot and times where it's more for rest. One of the kind of going back to the previous question, one piece of advice I was given, I need to follow a little bit better, was to have some CEO time set aside. So if you're depending on where you are in your business, if you're just starting and you need that time for building and growth, I think we always need time for building and growth and reflection. But setting aside that CEO time, I know like one person I talked about it set aside the last week of the month to just build. And so depending on every business, it's super different, but just having that day a week. And I think that's the hardest thing for me, because if I set aside a morning, a week, or a morning a month, and then it's open and a client calls and I can put them in there, I do that. And that, I think, hurts us really, and that we need to have that time. But I think as in terms of work-life balance, one of the biggest value for me in this stage of where my children are at is being available for, I have a strong value on dropping off my kids and picking up my kids and being at their activities. And that matters most to me right now in our life. And so I'm really okay with working odd hours. And so right now in my life, I am working, full time while they're in school. But then if I have to start my day at 5 a.m. to get, the business part up done or send all the emails or prep, that's okay with me, because that means that I stop when they wake up, we get ready for school together, we have that family time. I think just kind of setting apart your day in, what brings happiness to your flow, right? And so then I pick them up from school, and then I can, once we're settled for the evening, I can work again in the evening if I like. And that for me is the most important, just being able to have flexibility in my own schedule, saying yes to the things that I want to do. And then I think another big piece that sometimes we forget is reflecting back on the successes that we've had. And so I think as entrepreneurs, we need to, first of all, highlight the things that, fire us up and get us excited. And for me, it's about connection. And that's another one of my values, is impact and community connection. And so taking time to celebrate successes with, with family members of our clients, and with teaching staff, and with our own team, and then with ourselves, of looking back at what we've done in the past 6 months or in the past year, because there's always more to be done, right? We're always stuck in the grind of like, what's next? And I have all these, the mundane tasks, the day-to-day admin and stuff, but then also all the new programs we want to do. And there's always more to do. So just that reflection piece, I think, is really important in creating that happiness of what you've done and why you're doing it. The why, I guess, is the big piece of why we're doing it.
Yeah. I really appreciate your honesty and just where you're at in your life with your kids and just setting those boundaries. What is the trick? How do you stop working? Get
You
family
know?
time. It's something I'm really struggling right now. And I don't know if it's because I'm new in the business,
Yeah.
like new as a full-time entrepreneur. I don't know. Any
Yeah,
advice?
it is so hard, because I think that I do get stuck too. Like I'll pick her up from school and then I'll be wanting to send all the emails and things. And, I think that this year I've been better at setting a boundary of, okay, these are my working hours. But again, being flexible, because then when I did that for myself, when I said, I'm only working the hours of this and this, but then allowing yourself to make the changes if it feels good, right? So I think the boundary allows us to shut it off and say, no, I've told myself I'm done at this time. But then, like for me, I love working in the morning. It's when I'm most creative and when I can get the most done and uninterrupted when everyone else is still sleeping. So instead of then having that guilt of, oh, I said I wasn't going to work this morning, because then we always carry this guilt of what we should be doing, right? And the best piece of advice I was given is just have your own back, right? So have your own back for what you want to do. And if you want to work in the morning, or want to work outside of those hours you set for yourself, then that's okay if it's something you want to do, right? But otherwise, yeah, just having your schedule. And I think for my team, really trying to stick between like not sending emails in the weekends or any emails in the afternoons, just not having that back and forth so that we can shut off. And because for me, if I get an email in the evening, it's really hard not to reply then, right? To save it. And so that's something I'm actively working on. Oh, I can read it and save it and think on it and not have to just do it all so quickly back. So yeah.
Yeah. It's
Launch.
like having hard boundaries on certain things like
Yeah.
weekend or like night. And then if it feels good, it's
Yeah, if it
okay.
feels good,
Yeah.
yeah, it's okay. Because sometimes we do have an idea, we want to like, it's exciting and we're excited to work on it, then that's a yes, right?
Mhm.
But I think also being okay with saying no, because that was a really hard one for me, is if it's not an exciting yes, like I'm all into this, then it should be a no, and not just doing it because then we're gonna be resentful, right? And not show up. And if we say yes to all these things that we don't want to do, then we're not going to show up as our best selves and give it everything we have. Then that's not fair, I think, to those who we're doing it with, because maybe somebody else could have said yes better, right? So yeah, but it is a struggle to manage all the things, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think anybody listening to this who's going through the same thing will feel less alone and know that it's okay
Yeah.
to have some flexibility. It's not like black and white, and
Yeah.
there's, it ebbs and flows as a business owner. So thank
It
you for
does.
sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this was amazing. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in that program that you guys have
Mhm.
created. So if people want to learn more, where can they find and connect with you?
So we have a website, Communication Options Inc.
Okay.
And we are also on social media on Facebook and Instagram. We are just sort of getting rolling in that world because, again, I'm an SLP and not a social media person, but we're learning. We're always learning. I think just giving ourselves grace to learn as we go. But we are now on Instagram and hoping to do more and showing up in our community that way as well, to offer some tips and tricks and connection and programs. And yeah, so I'm happy to connect with anybody who is, in the same sort of area and creating programs. And I love your podcast for that. I think I've been listening to some and getting some new ideas too of like, oh, we could do that, or we could change it this way to meet our needs. Like, the drop in play ideas that you had on a couple weeks ago. And like just those sort of fun things where we can adapt what we're doing to meet the needs of our community in new ways. So I think that you're offering such a great resource for SLPs in this field who can feel lonely. So it's so great. So yeah, we're
Thank-
Communication Options Inc. though is where to find us everywhere on
Okay.
Instagram, Facebook.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm really glad that you found the podcast helpful. That's
Yeah.
definitely the idea. So it's always great to get feedback on what's working and what's not working. But this has been such a pleasure, Paige. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.